Hey everyone. This video contains spoilers for Celeste. Every few years, I accidentally stumble upon a game that completely resonates with my current emotions in that stage of my life. This happened during my first year of college, when I played Breath of the Wild at a time when I had moved away from home, and a world that I thought I knew suddenly became so much bigger. I had no idea how I was even going to begin to approach it. If any of you are familiar with the title, the first scene shows Link looking over the vast kingdom of Hyrule, having no real memory of who he is and what he's supposed to do. An almost perfect reflection of how I felt when I got on the plane from Minnesota and flew down to Florida, a place that would be my home for the next 4 years of my life. And just like Link, I needed to figure out how I fit into this vast new world. The same thing happened again this past week when I played Celeste. Celeste is a game about a mountain and a person named Madeline, who decides to climb the mountain for no other reason than to prove to herself that she can accomplish something. This journey proves to be difficult, and she faces constant adversity from everyone she interacts with on the mountain. The first person she meets is an angry old lady who is quick to dispel Madeline's desire to climb the mountain. This old lady is only the beginning of her troubles. Throughout the game, Madeline is constantly confronted by a Dark Doppelganger who takes every opportunity to tell her that her goal is pointless, going as far as to physically impede her progress a few times. Her interactions at the beginning of the game remind me of my own imposter syndrome, feelings of self-doubt that persist despite my education, experience, or accomplishments. This often takes form as a voice in my head, and it throws me into states of high stress with crippling indecision keeping me from advancing forward with my work. This is something that became more apparent as I was playing, and I couldn't help but draw connections between Madeline's struggle with self-doubt and my own with my pursuit of a college degree. When I started, I didn't know why I had decided to pursue a career in VR development. I hadn't spent my free time in high school coding games. I had never even considered programming to be a skill I would develop, just as Madeline had never climbed anything before. At times, I went as far as to fight against anyone who tried to present me with the opportunity to learn. That sentiment weighed heavily on my decision, but in the end I decided to go through with it, to become a VR developer, despite knowing nothing about the craft. Just as Madeline decided to climb Mount Celeste without any true reasons towards doing so. When I started at Ringling, it was difficult to say the least. Suddenly I was presented with an entirely new curriculum. I needed to teach myself how to draw, how to understand why some compositions worked and others didn't, how to illustrate the human figure, or try at least. The first semester took a lot out of me, and I spent a lot of time doubting myself, thinking, if I'm already struggling this much with the basics, how am I supposed to do well in my actual major courses? This doomed mindset made me want to give up. I wasn't meant to be a VR developer, and I should have stayed home, gone into something less intense, and remained in a place that was familiar and comfortable. Which is very similar to how Madeline felt after her first day of climbing. Clearly exhausted, she sits down by a fire and says, "This may have been a mistake," only to be confronted with that idea in the next level, when her Dark Doppelganger reveals herself, attempting to prove to Madeline that what she's trying to do is a mistake. She's not a mountain climber, and she should just go home. The story is clear in depicting Madeline's doppelganger as a visual metaphor for her fears and insecurities. This darker part of Madeline proves to be a serious problem throughout the game, and it reveals itself whenever Madeline is losing control. It causes her to yell at Mr. Oshiro when all he wanted was for Madeline to stay in his hotel, causing him to attack and destroy most of the old hotel in the process. It happens again when Madeline is on the cable car with Theo, as her darker self breaks down the cable car and causes a panic attack. Madeline, in a vulnerable state, then yells at her new friend, who is simply trying to calm her down. This happened a lot with me during my sophomore and junior years. I found myself struggling to grasp new concepts, to keep up with all of the work that was dropped on my shoulders. There were days that I would stay up until 4 in the morning only to get 4 hours of sleep before waking up for an 8:30 class the next day. I remember being so frustrated all the time, a zombie with no real control over the direction of my life, who was just going through the motions of VR development without any real artistry involved. Anyone who got in my way or said the wrong thing at the wrong time would meet the darker part of me. I never liked the results of those interactions. Every time I would lash out, I was instantly struck with immense guilt on top of the stress that I was already feeling. As Madeline gets closer and closer to the summit, she begins to face even greater adversity. These blockers manifested in later levels, which included her and Theo getting stuck in a dark mirror world with monsters and obstacles that took some genuine skill to get through. This deadly maze being the result of the darkness inside Madeline's head, which only causes further harm to her mental state as she felt personally responsible for dragging Theo into this mess with her. During the level, she begs her doppelganger to help her escape, or at least help her understand what is going on, but to no avail. She ends up escaping on her own and decides that she no longer needs or wants this darker presence in her life. She wants to reach the summit and leave this side of herself in the past. However, this doesn't end well. Her darker side becomes angry and lashes out, dropping Madeline to the bottom of the mountain, and she loses all of her progress. At this point, she's ready to give up. In her mind, she's failed, and it's time to go home. It isn't until she runs into the old lady who gives her a few words of wisdom that she makes a better choice. At this point, I began to understand what Madeline's doppelganger truly wants. Her fear, anxiety, anger, and her darker emotions aren't attacking her out of spite, which made me realize that the voice in my head isn't against me. It's exhausted. Those days when I don't want to get out of bed aren't laziness, but merely a reaction from my own dark doppelganger saying I'm pushing too hard. My personal fight for perfection and to ignore my own shortcomings is a completely counterproductive battle. By ignoring the problem, I'm setting myself up to fail. This isn't a feeling I can get rid of, and I can't just delete the part of my brain that makes me anxious every time I need to fly down to school, or the piece of me that gets uncomfortable in crowds, or the part of me that wants to continue with the same habits and agenda for years on end because it's what I know. That part of my mind is here to stay. Madeline understands this, and she decides to fix it. She seeks out this darker part of herself, asking for help, asking her to work together, but it isn't as easy as just making a choice to be different. Working with your mind is a difficult thing, and Madeline learns this when her darker side becomes hostile. This boss fight is probably my favorite part of the game. Helping Madeline take control of this dark doppelganger felt empowering and made me want to do the same with myself. I have spent so much time attempting to suppress my own fear and anxiety from controlling my life, and with it, I've been holding myself back. I've destroyed moments that should be excited, alienated people who were just trying to help me. Maybe my darker self isn't as intense or active as Madeline's, but it is still something very present in my life. The end of this fight sees the darker part of Madeline in shambles, saying she isn't needed and will try to go away. Madeline responds that she was wrong to cast her out and believes they need to work together. It is then that we, the player, get to see how much more powerful Madeline is when she finally gains control of her full self and sets off to reach the summit of Mount Celeste. As she climbs through the levels that I played at the beginning, she faces new challenges and obstacles which could only be overcome as her full self, and we see growth between the two as they get closer to the summit. After I completed the hotel section, Madeline manages to convince her darker half to apologize for being so mean to Mr. Oshiro, which truly surprised me given how cruel she behaved earlier. Later, Madeline considers turning back, thinking that maybe this mountain is too dangerous, but her other half convinces her to keep going, believing that they can climb this mountain together. Madeline is as strong as she's ever been, and she even remarks that if they fail to reach the summit, she will be happy because they tried. I get closer to holding that degree in my hands every day, but I cannot confidently say that this game fully changed me. I still haven't learned to work with that darker part of myself. I'm still afraid I won't get that model done in time, that the code that ran fine on my machine today will run successfully when I'm presenting it to my professors tomorrow, and I'm afraid I won't pass that next thesis milestone. I'm afraid to fail, and that's okay. I understand now that I probably won't reach that summit when I get through my next thesis milestone, or when I get my degree, or even when I achieve my ultimate career goals. That voice still has a strong presence in my head, but thanks to Celeste, I understand that I'm not supposed to fight it, but learn to work with it, because it's part of me. And when I finally reach that summit, I'll know.